This, of course, is your daily briefing, and you are most welcome to it. Some fantastic responses to yesterday's video. So first up, thanks very much indeed. I vehemently disagreed with a number of them, but it all adds to the flavour of the stock. So thank you. I just wanted to run through some points, just to kind of let you know where I am and almost, the risk of being really cheesy, react to your reaction, if that makes sense. But I think it's worth doing, and I think we'll get some value and hopefully a little bit of entertainment out of it. People create in their minds, I mean, I've certainly experienced this when I've been blogging over the years. I've been blogging for ages, and people sort of paint you as being this, that and the other, and it can be either a really great guy or a monster with three heads. It doesn't matter. But what they're not really, very rarely getting is the real article. And I find it amusing that I put a video up and say, I thought this window was a bit lousy, and people are talking to me as if I'm 20. I'm not a millennial. I've been supporting Spurs for 40 years. So I don't claim to have seen it all, but certainly as far as this investment company are concerned, I think I've seen enough. And to be told, and I haven't taken this personally, I'm sharing with you, I'm talking to you, you know. This is our conversation. I know it's a bit one way, but it isn't really, because we have the bit downstairs. But the business of, oh yeah, but you see, we're building and I've had all this. You're shouting down to the galley slaves here. You're saying, keep rowing, lads, because the land is just a few miles ahead, and we're going to have fresh food and meat and wine and dancing girls. Just keep it. I've been listening to this for years. You know, we've had 5-year plans, 4-year plans, back-to-back plans. So as far as this investment company, go, and with the wild optimism, I'm going to be as polite as you'll ever get me and say thanks, but no thanks. If we had been bought out by a Bond villain, let's call it like that, so there's no saying of, a nationality or any nonsense like that. But say a Bond villain, your typical football club owner these days, and he sat there in his volcano and he's saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I would have a certain degree of optimism, because it was a totally new thing, and it wasn't like the 10th time I'd been told something was going to happen. And also, with that person, you don't have the history of knowing that their heart truly isn't in it. You don't have the history of knowing that they won't back coaches, that they will refuse to spend on the 11th hour, and for halfpence of tar, the ship was lost, and all that business. The fact that you're penny wise and pound foolish, and unfortunately, for me, for you, for everybody, for the reality is that ENIC are a busted flush. We've been through all this before. So the idea that, anyway, let's cut to this, because I've got the names and I've got the numbers. All right. I have to be careful here, because I don't want to sort of metaphorically set fire to my audience, but a bit like, I think, a comedian, you can take the whittle out of somebody in the front row and it doesn't empty the hall. I mean, one guy actually said yesterday, I would have liked to have kept Toby for his experience. I mean, this is the sort of closed thinking that we need to get beyond. Toby was great. Just like when I was a teenager, I was a fast runner. I was a half-decent schoolboy footballer. But I'm not any of those things now. Toby's 32. And beyond that, he was incapable of playing 2 games a week, which is quite natural with his age. And he played up under both Pochettino and Mourinho. Another guy says, Spurs recruited a classy centre-half, Romero, potentially the best right club in the club's history. Whoops. Emerson, and a young player who will be candidate for Young Player of the Year 2022, Gill. I mean, listen, I hope it all comes true. I truly do. But I can only share the same hope I would with any child. And I have to use this terminology. This is wishful thinking to the point of penning a letter to Father Christmas. I'm going to get a bike, I'm going to get this, Well, you probably won't, mate. Romero has yet to start a Premier League game, and if antics continue, and I'm talking about this business of flying backwards and forwards, it'll be some wait before he does. And Emerson's numbers are not insane. If you think Emerson is going to be the best right back that this club has ever had, I have some smelling salts update for you. It's going to require him to really step up a gear as he adapts to a new league. There was sanity in this comment. Oh, sorry, and Brian Gill. Adapt to the league. Gill is 20 and wholly unproven at this level. Yeah, I do agree. He looks good. He looks like he might be exciting. And I kind of take it for granted that we would only buy players that had that edge to them. But it's so early, and to predict that he's going to win an award, maybe it was a throwaway remark and I'm taking it too seriously. But why would you say that if you didn't kind of half think it to be true? I just think the burden of expectation you're placing upon these players is kind of ridiculous. Sanity in this comment. We should be targeting players with Premier League experience, and that none of these signings have. And that's a massive, massive point. Big mistake not getting in a striker. Kane needs backup and competition. Ings would have been ideal. Letting him go to Villa has strengthened a near rival. Absolutely right. I don't think Ings is the best thing since sliced bread, but he does do a job. He does do a job. And if we'd have bought him, and we know that how much he cost, he was very affordable. If we had bought him, it would have meant that Harry Kane's legs would have been rested, and they're not going to be rested because this squad doesn't have it in them to even compete with the third tier of European football. The issue of a backup striker, and this is the other thing, people sort of say, oh yeah, but you wouldn't want a backup striker, but then what about a right back? Well, if we'd have treated Serge Aurier with a modicum of respect, we'd have a right back. If Matt Doherty wasn't cuckoo, hadn't fallen out with Nuno at Wolves, which is, I think we now have to say is clearly the case, we'd have a right back. But a backup striker, that was discussed in All or Nothing. That documentary came out nearly 2 years ago. And what have we had? Tap-in Vinny and endless mumblings about Dane Scarlett, who I might remind you, and I'm not being nasty, not being mean, but he's not even listed on the first team squad on the club website because he's a second-year academy player. The burden of expectation that you're putting on, I'll say it again and again and again, is far outreaches the abilities of the players you're putting it into. One guy said, it's not all about the money. As if I was, because I think got confused that because I was putting the amounts out and the amounts in, down and up onto the screen for you, that I was kind of moaning that we hadn't had a massive splurge. And that's never been my point with ENIC. My point with ENIC is that they just spend badly. Not that they don't spend enough. Goodness me, I'll come to the numbers that we've saved towards the close, including, incidentally, what I would do. There you go. There's the $1 million question. But I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm not on the big bucks. One guy said it's not all about the money. You walk into a jeweller's, mate. You walk into a jeweller's and buy yourself a watch, and the jeweller says to you, "How much do you want to spend?" You say, "I've got about £10." You're going to get a £10 watch. You walk into the jeweller's and say, "I want to buy a watch," and the guy says, "How much do you want to spend?" You say, "I've got 4, 5, 6 grand." You're going to get that class of watch. You better have a word with Daniel Levy because he believes that it is all about the money. And that's why he demolished White Hart Lane and built this soul harvesting device of a shopping centre in order to put in cashless terminals to fund the Brave New World. And you say it's not all about the money. Another guy said Nuno and Fabio were not in place as the window opened, so we were hamstrung. And just like that, Daniel Levy was absolved of all blame, sacking a coach a week before a cup final, and not just any coach, Jose Mourinho, and then spending 70 days plus finding somebody prepared to work under such stifling conditions. Just like that, absolution. And then we have the business of Paratici. If you don't have an awareness of the backstory of the directors of football at Tottenham, then you don't have any purchase in this conversation. None have been successful because they have all been hogtied by the bald Avenger. Comoli lasted 3 years, Baldini too, and Trevor Birch joined September 2020 and was out by January 2021. And I bet you, most of you don't even don't know that name. And add to this, the brightest of the bunch was undoubtedly Paul Mitchell, who's done very well for himself. Milton Keynes, I always do this, Milton Keynes Dons, Southampton, Spurs, Red Bull Leipzig, and now Monaco. And what did he get rewarded with? 16 months gardening leave to see out his contract. A gardening leave, incidentally, which gave Pochettino over 500 days of no transfer activity, which stretched over 3 windows. So this goes back to the galley slave thing. You didn't give me any meat and grapes and wine and dancing girls for 3 windows, and you're telling me, you're shouting down into the hold, and we're all there killing ourselves rowing, and you're telling me, oh, look, land's in sight, and I can make out dancing girls on the shore, and one of them's holding up a bunch of grapes. You're having a laugh. And so now we get some guy in a suit talking on his phone on a football pitch, and to some, this is better than weapons grade Viagra. Let the Don cook. What's he using for heat? An old radiator. And by his side, the man who said of his own volition in the All or Nothing documentary that he hated transfer windows. So what would I have done? Well, the first thing I would have done in this window would have to bring in Thomas Delaney, who partnered Pierre Højbjerg in Denmark in the Euros. He was very cheap. I'd be looking to shift out Bergwijn and Dele in order to pay for a striker, to then succession management to replace Kane. And before Kane left, and then use Kane's money to plough into a creative midfielder who cares. But I'd need Fabio's money in order to delve into it and to target that right creative midfielder, because the absence of Eriksen has yet to be healed. And again, I'm going to go back to it. I know it's boring, but you want to know. You want to talk about it. You want to tell me everything's bright and beautiful. I'm telling you it ain't. We never replaced Carrick. Then we stumbled across Modric. People didn't even rate either of those 2 players. Modric didn't get enough goals. Carrick, people didn't understand. So they went, and Eriksen went, and then we've not replaced Eriksen. And instead we've got Tongi, who needs a personality transplant, and we've got Lo Celso, who's on the jolly. But you see, the problem with my plan, which is very straightforward, not ambiguous, not, the realms of fantasy, is that Levy wouldn't sanction any of it, because it all stops with him. And that's why none of the directors of football that we've had in the previously have ever worked and ever stayed at the club for a prolonged period of time. So, to finish up, I've got some good news for you and a couple of bits from the paper. Alleluia, and I say this not because I'm religious persuasion, but the Sun are running with a piece here. Daniel Levy has never included a buyout